Hey everyone, you are listening to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. This little banter is about a car ride long and features your hosts, JJ Parker and Melissa Albers. JJ owns a tech company and Melissa has been a coach working with influencers for the last 18 years. Whoa, JJ.
Good morning.
That is some Christmas sweater.
Yes, it is my ugliest Christmas sweater I own.
Wait, you mean you've got more than one Christmas sweater?
Of course.
Oh my gosh. Okay, listeners.
It's Christmas time, and if you wear the same sweater over and over, you look like a crazy person.
I see.
So I have 5 different ugly Christmas sweaters, so I don't look crazy.
You don't look crazy at all. This snowman sweater is, it is an epic. Oh, I see. Oh, yes, he's backing up, folks. There are all sorts of, there are trees. There's a Santa in the very middle, right around his chest. And there are elves holding very large snowflakes at the bottom. Well, you are quite the festive guy.
Well, I wanted to be in the Christmas mood if we're going to talk about Christmas and the holidays.
Yes, and I'm a little sad because you guys, I also got the kibosh. I had a very large candle the size of a dinner plate that instead of having regular wicks has these little wooden ones, so it sounds like a fire. And JJ...
the crackling fire. Yep, that's a good one.
He suggested that might be a little loud and annoying. And the fire department.
The entire podcast would sound like your house is like slowly burning down or something.
The fire department would be here and we wouldn't get to finish our podcast. That would be very sad. Well, I am so happy today because we are talking about the holiday, Christmas. And for all of our friends that are not Christian, the holiday season that you celebrate as well. And there's just been so much yuck in the world that we just thought it'd be really fun to talk about what Christmas.
Talk about the holidays.
Yeah, to talk about the holidays. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. You know, we don't celebrate like a classic Christian Christmas at our house.
You don't?
But nope. I mean,
nope.
But no, you know, even without that, there's a whole feeling around that time of year, right? Around winter time and getting together and doing just different activities, and the new year coming, you know, it's just a fun time.
It is. And a lot of times, you know, people focus on the stress and the negativity of the holidays. However, I think that Christmas, you know, and especially this year, we don't know what's happening. There's all sorts of things going on in the world that can make it very stressful, right? And I think it is really important to recognize that Christmas is actually a feeling. Mm-hmm. And it is a feeling that is wrapped around every family's traditions or non-traditions.
Yep.
But Christmas is really a feeling inside that we can cultivate. Whether we are alone, whether we are with immediate family, or whether we are with legions of people, it's a feeling.
Yeah, I like the way you phrase that because, you know, especially this year, Christmas's holiday traditions are going to be different.
Yeah.
Right? Like
they're just weird.
They're just going to be different. I mean, it's been different. It's been weird all year. So why would this week be any different? Right? So.
You know,
I like the idea that like we cultivate the feeling, right? No matter what the circumstances, we are still trying to cultivate a feeling.
Yeah. So before this podcast, when I woke up this morning, I always wake up way earlier than I want to. And I just was laying in bed and I was thinking about Christmases past. And I was thinking that Christmas always started because I'm an only child. And while you have non-traditional Christian Christmas, my family, the family business is ministry. So my grandparents were both ordained ministers. And for much of my childhood, they shared a church. They co-pastored a church. So Christmas was spent in church.
So that's like the big workload
Yes,
season for your family,
that's
right?
exactly
That's the
right.
harvest, right?
That
That's
is,
the
yeah, it's the farming season harvest. That's exactly what it is. And it would start with, when I got a little older and I played an instrument, and my grandma would ask, "Do you want to play Silent Night on your flute?" And I was 9, and I was so scared, but I was so proud that I
Mm,
was asked to, stand up in front of church and play my flute. And those poor, poor people, because when I first started playing the flute, it was not good. But they all were attentive and acted like it was the Messiah music with the, the Boston Orchestra.
that's
Oh,
awesome. That's kind of like even part of that time, right? Just being very gracious
yeah.
with others, right?
Yes, right? It's a feeling. It is a feeling. I remember a particular Christmas Eve service. Now, Christmas Eve services, my grandparents were United Church of Christ, so that would be like a Protestant congregational
Mm.
church, and they would do a children's time in the middle of the service. So my grandpa had all the kids come up, and he loved children. He was just like the Pied Piper for children, and they were all sitting around him. And one Christmas Eve, a little kid, while my grandpa was trying to tell the Christmas story to the kids, this little kid leaned over and saw his hearing aid. And he said,
Mm.
"What's that in your ear?" And my grandpa's mic'd up, and he says, "It's, I eat a lot of walnuts. It's a walnut."
What?
And the kid looked at him sort of confused, and then my grandpa started to keep going on with the story, and the little kid leaned over and said, "You should eat peanuts."
What? That's funny.
But yes, Christmas Eve, like in our house, and I'd love to hear what your childhood experiences were, but Christmas Eve in our house never started until 11 o'clock at
At
night.
night? Oh
And
my.
I'm an only child, so used to not going to bed at 11, but going to bed at 8.
Yeah.
So just like trying to stay awake, and the enthusiasm warring with the exhaustion
Mm.
and the anticipation.
Oh,
Oh.
that's awesome. Yeah, for most of my childhood, we on Christmas Eve would always go to my aunt and uncle's house,
Mhm.
Romalie and Harley's, and they had 3 kids, so my cousins, but they were all a little bit older. So I think they're probably like 10 or 15 years older than I am.
Oh, yeah.
Well, maybe not quite that much, maybe 10. So, but it was always like a lot of people in
Mhm.
their fairly small house,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And we would always go in the basement, and my brother and I would have been like the little kids, right? The 8, 9, 10 year olds.
Right.
And then my cousins would be in like their late teens. So they were like the coolest kids
Oh, right.
ever, right?
Absolutely.
Right? And it was so awesome to go hang out with them because they were into such awesome stuff like cars and skiing and and it was a blast. And we would always just wrestle around with them.
Yeah.
They would joke that Aaron and I had monkey tails, and so they'd always be like grabbing our monkey tails and we'd wrestle around with them. But the thing I always remember about that is it got so hot in their basement
Yes.
when like there's like 30 people and the kids are all wrestling and running around, right? And it must have been 105 degrees down there. It's like sweating all. But that was just kind of again part of the feeling, right? It was
Yeah.
really cozy,
Yeah.
you know.
Right. Really
Um,
cozy.
Yep. And then we'd
Oh.
open their basement door, in the middle of winter in Minnesota, and that like 10-degree cold air would mix in with that super hot basement air.
And you were all wet and sweaty. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is funny. I can just visualize that. I remember those days too. Oh, that is
So,
so awesome. And I remember one year we were opening gifts and we didn't have a lot of money and we didn't care about that. It wasn't a thing, right? We didn't get big extravagant gifts for I didn't get extravagant gifts and our family wasn't in a habit of that anyway. But there was one particular Christmas that I was teased about forever after. And I think I must have been 5 or 6. And every single gift that I opened, I would exclaim in the exact same way, "Oh, just what I always wanted." I don't know if I had seen that on a commercial or a show or something, but I just thought that was the thing to say that year.
like you were one of those like pull string dolls, right?
Yeah,
You just say like the same
exactly.
thing over and over.
Oh, that's funny. So then, and then every year when we would leave my grandparents' house, they lived in southern Minnesota in a little town called Medford, which was no bigger than a minute. It had a church and a gas station, and that was about it.
Hmm.
And when we would leave, I would sob. I would sob and cry all the way past Faribault, which was over 30
Mm-hmm.
minutes away, because I just did not want to leave them, and I did not want to leave the feeling of Christmas.
Yep. Yeah. I'm sure after your super late night Christmases, you're exhausted the next day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
What about with now with your kids, with your kids are older
Yeah.
now, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
How
Mm-hmm.
how is Christmas and the holidays changing for you as your kids like have
Yeah.
become older?
Yeah. Well, it's actually interesting that you're asking that, because in this, Christmas past and feelings thought process I was going through this morning, I started to think about how I felt when I was their age, when I
Mm-hmm.
was in my early 20s, because when I was in my early 20s, I already lived on my own. I had an apartment, I was
Mm.
working, and I didn't have any money because I insisted on having a really nice apartment. So I had
Mm-hmm.
no money left. And so I would really try to recreate Christmas by myself through feelings, um, watching shows, Christmas
Mm-hmm.
shows that would elicit that, playing Christmas music, baking, making little Christmas crafts.
Mm.
Um, so when I was in my early 20s, that's how I spent my time. But yeah, it's a really different world with my kids that are in their early 20s.
So when your kids were younger, like did you have similar traditions as you did when you were a kid?
I tried to. Yeah, I made Christmas, and I still do. It's a really big deal for me. Um, and again, I think that if I'm really honest, I think that the feeling is more exciting for me. The feelings of anticipation, the feelings of the wonder of the season,
Mm.
what is possible in the season, makes me go absolutely nuts around my house at Christmas. And my kids in their early 20s are kind of swept up in it.
Mm.
They get sort of swept up in it. Like, for example, it is not unusual for me to bake like 90 to 100 dozen cookies.
Wait, I got to do the math. I got to get a calculator. Night.
Uh-huh. That's true. Like, I make probably 12 or 13 kinds, and I make candy and
Uh,
caramels and bars and crazy. So the kids expect that they're going to, the minute they walk in the door, start eating.
there's gonna be 1,200 cookies and candies to eat.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. How about you? What do you guys do?
Well, we have a pretty low key holiday. Um, we usually we actually still went to my aunt and uncle's house
Mm.
um, until just a few years ago, which is kind of amazing. My uncle passed away a few years ago, and my aunt, moved out of the house. But what was awesome is when I was a kid, my older cousins were around. Well, then they all had kids.
Oh,
And so then
right.
I was like the cool older, like
Oh, you
person in
got
their
to
life.
take that role.
I got to take that role, which was so awesome. It was so fun. Um, and then now all those kids are like, in their 20s,
Yeah.
maybe even the 30s. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's crazy how time flies. But yeah, we still did Christmas Eve with um, over at my aunt and uncle's house
Mm.
for a long time. Um, and then our kids went, and my second cousins, I guess that would play. So we just had this whole generational sort of like cycle happening for a really long time.
Yeah.
Um, but nowadays, like um, we alternate our Christmases, right? Like because my
Hmm.
in-laws live out in Wisconsin,
Yeah,
so
like a lot of
um,
families do.
every other year we go out to Wisconsin, and um, my mother-in-law, she really likes Christmas, and actually more than maybe Christmas Day, I think she really likes preparing for
Yeah.
Christmas.
No, but
So
that's the thing. It's the
it's great.
feeling. There it is again. It's
Yep,
the feeling of
it's like
anticipating.
months ahead of time. It's like, what do the kids want for Christmas? And we're like, it's June. I don't know.
Oh
What do
my
you guys want to
gosh.
eat? Helen, it's only September.
Oh my gosh. Okay, fine. I'm
So
gonna
she has
totally.
got
That's
she
so
has got
funny.
like months of Christmas before it actually happens.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and then it's fun. She does a great job. We have a nice meal. Um, Kids do presents, and then um, really what's funny is we're not. I would say we're probably a little more strict with screen time
Yeah.
in our normal day to day. But I think for our kids, probably what they're going to remember is just like an entire 4 days of nonstop like video games and watching TV.
Actually, wasn't it Christmas? Wasn't it the Christmas holiday a couple years ago that you made that whole ice igloo in the backyard?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Christmas time for me, the holiday is really mostly about snow and how much
Yes.
snow there is. My Christmas feeling is directly correlated to the number of inches of snow we have.
Or what you can reproduce in your backyard if it isn't to your standard.
When we one of the years we were here, um, our my parents, I think, were in Florida. We didn't have any, we were just here, like just the five of us, kind of on our own, one year. And our neighbors always had a little Christmas get together, and they always invite us over, which is cool. And that particular year, we had a lot of snow, and it was snowing on Christmas Eve.
Oh.
And I had spent like an obscene amount of time snowblowing our entire backyard into a gigantic sledding luge. Right? And it was like twisty and turny and long, and I iced it. Like, this is a pro tip for any of you listeners out there. If you really want your kids' sledding hills to be awesome,
Oh my
you gotta
God.
like get the snowblower involved. You gotta get your hose out, and you gotta like ice it and shape it and sculpt it, and it becomes amazing. Anyway,
And wear helmets. Please wear helmets. Good God.
it's fine. You don't need helmets. But that
Oh my
year,
God.
the sledding luge was unbelievably awesome, and it was gently snowing, and like all these people from the neighbor's house spent the entire evening
Oh,
sledding, and
wow.
it was magical. It was just everyone was
Wow.
having a blast. It was beautiful out. The
Oh,
snow was falling. You had
yeah.
like the glow of all of the lights. You know, one of the things I really like about the season is the lights.
Yeah,
That
me
sounds kind of
too.
silly, but like I really
I
love
do
how
too.
the lights glow in the evening, and
Yeah.
like the scenery is just kind of lit up different than normal,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
always really eye-catching.
Yeah. Do you know, 2 winters ago, right before Christmas, I went down to Marco Island where one of my best friends lives, and they had scooters. And the two
Mm.
of us got on scooters and drove around the island to see people's lights. So and it was such a surreal, weird thing to be doing because there's palm trees and huge decorations in yards of Santa on their sleigh. There was one yard that had full-size reindeer
What?
and a sleigh, and there were literally thousands of lights, like thousands of lights. It was so cool.
if if everyone's not gathering, we're up in Minnesota, so
Yeah,
our Christmas. I've always lived in Minnesota, so our Christmases are always
yeah,
cold and snowy.
yeah.
Um,
Or at
I'm
least we
sure
hope they are. We always want
I'm
them to
sure
be
a
for sure.
Floridian Christmas is much different than
Yeah, yeah, it is. It
our
is.
experience.
But you know what? They recreate the feeling with the things that they have around them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking it feels unfair with the Christmas light thing if you live in Florida because you can just be out there in like nice weather, intricately putting your Christmas lights up. For us people in
In
Minnesota,
shorts.
like you
Yeah.
have to get out there, you have to put them out before your
Run.
fingers freeze.
Run.
So
Yeah, there's a lot of services in Minneapolis that will start putting lights in before Thanksgiving in anticipation of it being too cold and snowy to put them in later.
this year I
Oh,
missed our perfect like
yes, you did.
like our weather, and now I had to put the Christmas lights up in the freezing cold.
Well,
But I did
hey,
it anyway.
and I was going to say, if you haven't done it yet, I bet you that sweater you've got on is pretty darn warm. I like how the snowmen, by the way, the hat is a little jaunty. It's a little off to
Oh
the
yeah.
side a little, and I
Yeah.
noticed that the buttons are quite square.
Yeah, it's not a very well-made sweater.
Oh no, au contraire. I think it's a beautifully made sweater. It's very detailed.
So the other thing when I think about Christmas feeling,
Yeah.
right? Um, there is so many things around the holiday season that we've been talking about like how past Christmases have felt, right?
Hmm.
And we probably, at least I do, generally remember the good things and kind of like forget about the things that
Hmm.
maybe were terrible.
Yeah.
Like when I was 12 and I didn't get a Nintendo. Um,
Mitch wanted a bike and he got a John Deere bike and he was so embarrassed. He was like, "What is that? I can't ride that."
uh, is part of the fun tormenting children? Because I kind of, as a parent, personally find it a little bit satisfying. One year, when the boys were younger, we told them that they could open an early Christmas present.
Yeah.
And they were like so excited because all the presents were out, and then we said, "Yep, you can open this one." And we wrapped up like old cans of soup, and they're like super. What's this? You gave us soup?
You can't do that.
But just the idea, like we have a lot of expectations, right? Even
Yeah,
like
we do.
remembering our past, like, hey, let's recreate this feeling or traditions from Christmas past, and then we kind of put like some pressure and anxiety
Yeah.
on
Yeah, yeah.
ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And when you talk about Christmas as a feeling, I just think we should remember like a lot of that feeling can be controlled by us, right? It's just how we're
Totally.
framing things, how we're
Totally.
setting expectations around
Yeah.
things,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
You know, for a little while, I kind of like felt like our Christmases weren't, they weren't really big events, and I was like, should this be a bigger deal? Other people do all this stuff. I kind of felt bad about it,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
But we just do things like our way, like it's okay.
Yes.
Like
Exactly.
we'll have our own way
Yeah.
of going about the holiday season.
Though, I'm also going to say something that Christmas is past, because I've lost both my grandparents now. And there have been usually one time in every season, every Christmas season, I will turn all the lights off in the house. I put on just the Christmas tree lights, and I sit on the couch in the dark, and I just remember all of the Christmases from my past. And there very often there's lots of tears, but it isn't just sad. It's also beautiful. Like just knowing the whole history of my life and what I've gotten to experience, and the people that I have loved that have gone on, the people that I love that are still here. I mean, those feelings are so valuable, because that depth of sadness is also a measure of the depth of happiness, because they're always in equal measure. And I just feel very grateful that I've been able to have people in my life that I have loved so deeply that it's a big hole when they're not here. Yeah. And I think that's also part of the tradition, is remembering where you came from, remembering. And yes, we all have skeletons. We've all got stuff we could focus on that isn't favorable. However, it is really nice to recreate those good feelings inside as a measurement of the love that you've had in your life.
Yeah, that's a great thing for everyone to remember.
Yeah. Well,
and go with the flow, right? Just
go with the flow. And if it gets too harsh, go out and get a pair of those moose mugs like in Christmas Vacation and drink some eggnog. Fill up your eggnog.
And well, a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and
yes,
everything to you.
Yes, and enjoy all of your Christmas and holiday feels. We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. Our mission is to help people become happier and more effective by gaining insight into their own thoughts and feelings. We'd love your support. First, share this podcast with anyone you think might enjoy it. Second, leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast site. This helps others discover the podcast so we can reach more people. And third, sign up for our newsletter at theselfawarenessjourney.com. This will help us communicate better with you and build our community. Thank you so much for joining us in the Self-Awareness Journey. We'll see you next week.